Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to this webinar. Today we'll be talking about how to build a neobank in 90 days. This webinar would be jointly hosted by Aspire Systems and Temenos. So just a quick introduction. Temenos is the world's leader in providing banking software, and they have partnered with several banks and financial institutions across the world. Over 3,000 banks across the globe, including 41 of the top 50 banks use Temenos solutions. Aspire Systems, we are a global implementation partner for Temenos. We work with Temenos across the world for different banks. We are also experienced, and we provide services to enterprises, including banks and retail companies, other industries as well. We also cater to independent software vendors. We provide services from product engineering to enterprise solutions to independent testing services, as well as IT infrastructure support services. Myself, I am Kamal Chandramohan. I am the Client Engagement and Solutions Manager for BFS practice at Aspire Systems. Over the last few years, I've been working with different neobanks as well as traditional banks to implement their digital banking. I would be co-hosting this webinar along with Pradyut from Temenos. Pradyut, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Kamal. Sure. Hi, everybody, and a warm and welcome good morning, good afternoon to all of you, whichever time zones you're in. I'm myself based out of Sydney, and I look after the Temenos SaaS business in the Asia Pac business. SaaS for us is an acronym for Software as a Service. Temenos has been, as Kamal rightly said, in the market for over 25 years as the leading software vendor for banking and in the financial industry. I work with customers of all shapes and size in that space, promoting and talking about the Temenos SaaS offering and SaaS solutions for banking specific use cases. We'll talk more about the Temenos arsenal and the solutions later in the deck. For now, I hand it back over to Kamal to begin the webinar. Over to you, Kamal. Thanks.
Thanks, Pradyut. So let's get started. So this is the high-level structure that we are going to follow through the webinar. So let's get started. We are talking about how to build a neobank in 90 days. We all know about neobanks, and we also know that neobanks have been increasing in popularity over the last couple of years, right? It could be due to various factors, and it could be due to the kind of customer experience that the neobanks provide, which the traditional banks, rarely provided. It could be due to several factors, but the fact is, the popularity of the neobanks have been consistently growing, right? But today, if you see, the circumstances around us are completely changing, right? We know that the IT spending for the companies across the globe, if you look at this chart here, it has been consistently increasing at the beginning of the year. And the moment it touched March, it actually started coming down. And we know what happened in March, right? And it's predicted that the remittance flows across the globe is actually going to go down. And APAC in specific, if you see, is going to come down by 13%. This is what the World Bank predicts. This is going to put a lot of toll on individuals and companies across the world, and specifically in APAC as well. In APAC, it's predicted that the NPAs could rise all the way to $600 billion in 2020, and 70% of the banks in APAC region would likely take government support to run the bank. Now, if you look at even the GDP across the world, it's not very confidence inspiring. The GDP growth rate for 2020 that's predicted by IMF for the world. In the US, it's a negative growth of 6% is what is predicted. In Europe, slightly more, negative 6.7. Even the APAC region is likely to end up in negative growth. So there is a lot of pressure, and there is a lot of bad days ahead. Even if you look at the SME sector, the government has come up with a lot of new programs to support the SMEs in different parts of the world and also to revive demand. In the US, $359 billion of stimulus just for the SMEs have been announced. And similarly, in Singapore and Australia, the governments have come up with new programs in terms of loan deferrals or government guarantees in the loans. So there is a lot of pain and gloom, but is it only that? Is there a line of hope here? But we can see the silver lining. We see a ray of hope, and that's clearly in the digital side of things. If you look at the way the digital apps and the digital interactions have gone up, it has gone up multi times. Just take the example of some of the digital tools that we actually use for collaboration and interaction. It has grown multi-fold. I mean, most of us in this webinar today, we are working from our homes and we are connecting to each other over these digital tools. And if you look at specifically on some of the digital tools that's available in the financial sector, take the case of PayNow in our region. PayNow had a program to for the first 20,000 SMEs who signed up, they were giving some cash bonus. And you know what? 120,000 new businesses have signed up for that. 2 million individual users have registered for PayNow. So it's clear that there is an increased demand for digital and digital banking. Let's look at some of the aspects of this. Social distancing is a buzzword that we hear all around us, right? So we all know the importance of social distancing in today's world. And this brings with it a certain change in the way we do things, right? In the way we do banking in specific. Since you have to follow social distancing, it's very difficult for you to go to a branch and do your banking. Now, you would put your life in danger, you would put an employee of the bank's life in danger. So you don't want to do that. You want to sit at home and do your banking. Physical cash and the physical bills, some of the banks in the APAC region, they actually store the cash for a 2-week period just to disinfect the bills because, the virus could actually spread through the bills. Even with physical payments, when you actually give your credit card for making a payment, you use the device to actually punch in your PIN. It's not very safe for the environment and for the people who are actually using it. So there is definitely a need to do social distancing, avoid physical banking, physical cash, and physical payments. Now, if you look at some of the banking channels, some of the new digital banking channels, mobile banking has gone up by 16%. Online banking has gone up by 40%. And if you look at the checks that is deposited online, it has gone up by 40%. So this is the clear proof in the pudding that the digital banking is definitely the need of the hour. And we really need to look at how we can actually get into this bandwagon. Now we already knew that neobanks were getting popular. We have also seen an increased need and increased demand for neobanks. Let's look at some of the attributes of the neobanks. So let's look at both from a bank perspective as well as from a customer perspective. So from a bank perspective, we know neobanks are going to be digital to the core. They are digital only without any actual physical branches. But then what more than that? Neobanks have a specific target segment, and that is the USP of the neobanks. They would either target an SME segment, and inside SME itself, they would focus on a very specific industry or a set of industries. Or they could be looking at retail, and in retail, they could be looking at gigs, or they could be looking at people with a very limited credit history. And then they actually leverage on technology to actually ensure that giving out loans to people who do not have a very good credit history would be safe. So their technology would overcome the limitation of analyzing whether it's worthy to give loans to a particular section or a particular individual. Also, the way at which the speed at which the neobanks are able to go to market, able to push a product or service into the market to the customers, that has to be super fast. So that's another attribute of a neobank. If you look at a few of the customer-centric functionalities or attributes, the way the customers today, especially the Gen Z or the Gen Y, they will interact with their world in the sense the social media world or the even the e-commerce world, right? They want to have seamless transactions. They want to engage with these businesses through different channels. They want to start the transaction on one channel, end the transaction on another channel. So the banking is also no different. The banking also needs to be omni-channel. The banking also needs to provide seamless transition across the channels. Now, one of the most important attributes, I would say, of the neobank is about customer centricity, right? And the kind of personalization that a bank actually gives to its customers. The customers wants to be provided with a product or service before they even ask that, right? The bank should know the customer, and that's what the customer expects. So these are some of the attributes that customers as well as banks, expects from a neobank. Now let's look at some of the neobanks in the region. So there are primarily two kinds of neobanks, right? One is where the traditional banks are spinning off the neobanks. They actually bring a subsidiary of their own, and they give it a new name, and they give it a complete different branding, and then they run it as a neobank. There are also fintechs who actually come in and then they have a partial license, or they actually tie up with some other entity and to get a license, a banking license. Let's look at some of the examples here. One is Open. So this is a neobank based out of India. So this is primarily focused on the SME sector. As I said, they have to have a focus. They have to target a specific customer segment. So they focus on the SME sector, and specifically in the SME, they actually focus on the very small industries or enterprises, where the USP of this bank is they actually provide an accounting module to these customers. And through this accounting module, the customers can raise invoices, receive invoices, and make payments directly. So they don't really need another accounting software. The neobank actually provides it for them. Yono is another example. It's much more focused on the retail side. Taimo is again a retail focus. It's actually the first neobank in Vietnam, and their USP is that customers would be able to make fund transfers using their mobile number. So they don't really have to add a beneficiary and all that. They don't have to take the pain of doing that. They can just access the contacts and then make a transfer, which is very convenient. So that is their USP. Now, if you look at some of the new banks who got the fintechs who came in and then got a license in Australia, if you look at 86400, that's a neobank. 86400, the name stands for the number of seconds in a day. So this particular neobank there, they again lets customers save more and more. So retail customers save more and more. So they are given with two kinds of accounts: a pay account and a savings account. So pay account for all your daily transactions. So if you have a debit card, and all your transactions would actually go out from the pay account. And the savings account is purely for saving. And in addition to that, they give you a lot of saving instruments or tools which will enable you to do saving. It could be a goal-based saving. It will give you spend categorization, how much you spend on food, how much you spend on fuel, so that you will be able to budget and see, how much you're crossing the budget, or are you within the budget, and things like that. Judo Bank, a classical example of a SME bank, SME Neobank, and they always felt that the banks, the traditional banks in the region, were not really serving the SMEs well. So they believe that there are a significant percentage of the SMEs who were not served well by the traditional banks. And that was the whole idea of Judo Bank, to actually come in and then, using technology, analyze the customers and then provide them loans without having them give sufficient collateral. So many of these banks could not actually raise the collateral which the traditional banks require. But Judo Bank was able to overcome that using technology. So these are some of the examples, I would say, of the neobanks that have come up in the region. Each come with their own business objective. Each come up with their own target customers in mind. All right. So now let's look at the how part of it. So we understood that there is definitely a need for the neobank. There's an increased need for the neobank. Now let's look at how do we do this? How do we achieve this? And here I hand it over to Pradyut from Temenos, who would address this how part of it. Over to you, Pradyut.
Thanks, Kamal. And once again, hello, everybody. Thanks for the insightful session, Kamal. Really surprised me to see the number of the neobanks/digital banks that we call out in the APAC region. I knew a couple of them, but did not know that so many exist. So clearly the time is ripe for such initiatives across the financial spectrum. So moving on, the way we structured the presentation, we talked about the what and the why, but it's also equally important to know the how. And Temenos really would like to take this opportunity to walk you through our blueprint and the way we have thought about this entire tectonic shift that's happened in the market, so to speak. And newer banks, newer financial organizations coming up at a rapid pace, trying to solve pain points for customers, address markets that traditionally haven't been addressed before, for reason or the other, and trying to find a technology solution to a fairly complex industry. Banking, as we all know, and you guys probably know it better than me, is a highly regulated, complex environment. You just cannot go and do a jack there without making sure that you tick all the boxes and you are compliant, because at the end of the day, you are dealing with people's money and their subsistence or livelihood. With that, I'll begin. Just to talk about our blueprint, we thought of it in two specific ways, leading up to a third way, as you can see on the slide right now. We thought about, okay, so what can we offer as a product, as a solution to our customers, and then how can we run it for them? And then we thought, if we can do these two things very well, the third's automatically taken care of. Our customers and prospects would then want to consume this as a service and would just care for the business outcome, which will eventually help them reach their targeted goals or their target achievement. That is to offer what they want to offer to their end customers, right? So eventually, this is how we wanted to be a valuable contributor in the journey of these new banks and challenger banks. So the first part, don't build it. That's one of our that's our opening tenet or recommendation. When we where I'll try to talk about the solutions that we have at Temenos, which our customers can utilize out of the box to offer the products that they intend to their customers. Now, when I start with the don't build it part, I again go back to drawing board and I look at a challenger bank, and the first question that I ask is, hey, wait a minute, where are your customers coming from? I mean, you're not an established bank. You might have an established brand name, but you still need to wean people away from whatever it is that they were doing or whatever the status quo was, to say, hey, try this new thing or try this new banking a product or banking a vendor or download this app or sign up on this website or whatever that action may be. And that's where we talked about. So we've reimagined the whole thing to say, can we solve for this part first? So which is, can we solve for acquisition and onboarding? Can we help our customers acquire customers? Which takes me to my first solution, that we have something as part of the Temenos Infinity product suite. Can I help you acquire your customers? Can I increase your conversion rate? So with our products, can I deliver you a customer-centric omni-channel experience and improve conversion rate across all the product lines that you begin with? So as a neobank, as a challenger bank, you may start with one product and expand to 3 as business grows, or expand to 30 as business grows. Can I help you get more leads converted to more opportunities? Then can I accelerate your speed to market? So if there are unique customer journeys, acquisition journeys that need to be tailored or created based on the myriad products that you may offer, can I create these specific contextual personalized journeys for you? And the third thing, while I'm designing these journeys, can I give you accurate, useful analytics to identify where are the friction points in your product or in your solution? Where is it that your prospects are abandoning you? Where is it that your prospects are not customers? So Temenos has gone ahead, thought about all of these use cases, and put together the Temenos Infinity suite of products, which exactly addresses the acquisition and onboarding aspect. Moving on to originations, another part of another variation of onboarding. Can I add new products to my portfolio? So today I have a workflow that connects my product manufacturing to my customer onboarding, and tomorrow I launch a new product. Let's say I have a personal loan product, I launch a mortgage product. How easy it is for me to get my customers onto these different product workflows? How can I decrease the application time? So when a customer comes and applies for a new product, how easy for him it is to do the entire life cycle from step 1 to step N. And eventually, how can I do automated decisioning to make sure that decisioning isn't restricted to a manual vetting process? And this is something that Kamal touched upon earlier as well, of a specific bank wanting to lend out loans to a target audience that have never been addressed before. How can I tweak my credit decisioning engine to make sure it takes into account factors that matter today in 2020 as to when that engine was probably configured several years back? And how can I keep iterating and keep working on that as new events and new activities keep evolving in our own lives? So that's the origination solution from us. Then we're moving on to the omni-channel banking. It's more than a solution. This is the experience that we talk about. With our product-based approach, essentially, we are able to help you provide a unique experience to all your customers, no matter which part of the bank they interact with. You can have a customer, think of it this way, you can have a customer who is your personal banking customer and who also does business banking with you. Can we ensure that that customer has a unique experience no matter which app they open up? Can they get the consistency of UI, the consistency of performance, the consistency of responsiveness across these applications? And can I continue to identify where are the friction points across all of these application suites? And the final piece of the puzzle. In your first 90 days, given that you have acquired a slew of customers who amounts to the hundreds, to the thousands, to the 10,000s, how do you retain them? How do you build a sense of loyalty? Let's face it, the customers that you've acquired, they probably were customers with somebody else before this. And if you don't have ways to reward that loyalty, to acknowledge that loyalty, it's quite likely that you're not going to be able to create a sticky experience. So how can you create a sense of loyalty? How can you give them what does Temenos solutions, how will the solution help you in that sense? Can I identify the context and the persona help you identify the context and persona of your customers so that you can give them the advices for the right products at the right time? Can somebody who's a wanderlust get offers for a travel insurance package? Can somebody who's a sports lover get a discount on their season's tickets for a sports event? All of these are complex omni-channel journeys that can be configured under Temenos Infinity solutions so that your customers get the right products, the right offers at the right time. They have to be incentivized to continue using your platform. And eventually, it also helps your business because it helps you drive revenue upwards. All of these experiences on the Temenos front office experience solutions helps you by helping your customers stick to your solution and gives them that unique personalized experience. And all of this is powered by the Temenos scalable digital core banking solution. And this is not a new kid off the block, essentially. The other solutions that I talked about, Temenos Infinity, as the industry has evolved, as in our lives have evolved, and people have moved to digital and they expect similar experiences across the spectrum, those things have come into existence. But the core banking system Temenos core banking system is essentially our market leading product for the last 25 years. It has evolved significantly while retaining all of the functionality that has made it the number one seller in the banking ecosystem. And so what does it mean really when you say a scalable digital core? It's a digital core essentially for us is a cloud native, cloud agnostic core, which leverages the core fundamentals of cloud computing principles to keep the run costs low and make sure that the core is independent of any third-party solutions or services built on top of it, as well as something that can be scaled as the business with your bank goes up and down. So let's say you have hit the winning formula and you suddenly see tremendous traffic on your bank servers. The core helps you scale up in those times, while again intelligently scaling down when traffic automatically drops. The extensibility of the core also helps you reduce disintermediation. Gone are the days when the core was a proprietary technology owned by a vendor and with a huge barrier to entry. Today, Temenos acknowledges that all services and all products cannot be offered by them. There are a bunch of developers and third-party applications which want to leverage a feature-rich core and build services on top of it. Temenos, with an open API philosophy, its published documentation of over 700 APIs, helps you build on top of those API endpoints and release your own services and products. And finally, one of the most key aspects, the fundamental software engineering principle that Temenos uses is a model bank approach. Every country gets its own model bank. A model bank is nothing but a collection of pre-configured out-of-the-box features that you can take and start running as a challenger bank. As we all will agree, buying a core is just one part of the puzzle. How do you start using it? How much time do you spend working with an implementation party? How much money do you spend on that? How much resources do you spend while you also need to think about your business? And a model bank approach is typically helpful in that scenario because it helps you launch right off the bat as you get the core, as you onboard the core, because there are features pre-built. Temenos spends nearly 20% of its profits into R&D, building these cores and enhancing these model banks for each of the countries that it operates in. And this is one of the key USPs that over the years we have demonstrated with our Temenos core banking solution. And the final piece of the puzzle that I want to talk about is the FCM solution. While all of the fancy things about digital and mobile banking and core and a cloud agnostic core and all those remain true, One single thing that will always remain is banking works in a complex regulated environment. Whatever I just said will matter zilch if there are credibility issues with the product or with the brand that you have just launched. Temenos Financial Crime Mitigation Solution exactly does that. It is conscious of the fact that anti-money laundering, FCM, is more often than not seen as a cost center by most financial organizations. So it's a low-cost, best-in-class solution to ensure that you are equipped in the best possible manner to track all suspicious activities, to do all the required regulation screening against the watch lists as prescribed by the governing bodies. It has the lowest rate of false positive alerts in the industry. It has a prepackaged out-of-the-box anti-money laundering solution that helps you get up the blocks very quickly and deploy an FCM solution that can work independently of the core. A very important point. You don't just need to be on the Temenos core to be able to use the FCM solution. All of these products that I have just talked about, or solutions that I have just talked about in the last 5-10 minutes or so, are indicative of the vast arsenal that we have at display to answer the how part. How do you start up a digital bank in 90 days? Of course, specific to your business model and your business plan, some of these will or will not make sense. But the idea is that each of these play a significant role as you go from day 0 to day 30 to day 90 to day 365 of your digital bank journey. Moving on. Now that I've addressed the don't build it part, I want to spend some time on the don't run or deploy it part. This is where the latest technology and computing comes into discussion. Over the last 5 years or so, the most amount of investment has happened in moving traditional on-premise workloads to public cloud platforms, your Microsofts, your AWS, your Google Clouds of the world. There obviously are distinct advantages that come with such a movement, and there are also a lot of challenges that one needs to solve for. The approach that Temenos Software as a Service, or SaaS, has taken is that it has decided to abstract away all these challenges from its prospects and customers so that they can focus on their customers and not on running IT. Each of the Temenos products that you can see on the screen right now, from channels to front office to wealth to core banking, is run and supported on the Temenos SaaS solution, which is powered on Microsoft Azure. The reason for selecting Azure is pretty straightforward. It is the most ubiquitous public cloud computing infrastructure, and a lot of industries support Azure for its mission-critical workloads. It's the most secure, and it really helps us give an edge over our competitors, and also really gives a lot of, I would say, peace to the regulatory bodies. They feel at ease because Microsoft works very closely with these vendors, and all in a nutshell, the offering makes a lot of sense to get a tick in the box from a regulatory perspective. So what does SaaS really mean for us? We talked about banking, we talked about Temenos, and we talked about public cloud. The essential definition for Temenos SaaS for us is a single service by a single vendor under contracted service levels. End-to-end coverage from risk, security, through to platform management and performance, all under one service. The operative word here being end-to-end coverage. Once you sign up for the service, the entire operations, technology, and the functionality of Temenos products is run and managed by Temenos folks themselves. Who better than to do it, than manage it, by the guys who have built the software in the first place. Okay, the core tenets of SaaS as defined by Temenos in any climate is resilience by design. It doesn't matter what the situation is, whether it's a regional disaster or whether it's a global pandemic. Even during the current unfortunate COVID situation, each of our customers running Temenos SaaS have gone about their business as usual. If there is a spike in banking due to the digital spurt by their customers, the infrastructure has automatically scaled up to account for that. People. There is a high level of automation from a Temenos SaaS solution perspective. This means that the involvement of manual activities is already to a minimum. This was done independent of an unfortunate pandemic hitting us, but the benefit can be seen by all. There is no downtime so far that has been experienced by customers who are running the Temenos SaaS solution, simply because it's a software-defined networking paradigm. It's managed via a software, and no fulfillment requires people to be in contact with each other. Again, supported by industry-leading software, which is Temenos, and policies and procedures which have evolved in conjunction with regulatory bodies all over the world. So in Australia, we speak with APRA. In Singapore, we work with MAS. In Indonesia, we working with OJK. In Thailand, we are working with DOT. In each of these regions, we work with the regulatory bodies to evolve our policies and procedures to suit that particular market. So in a nutshell, if I have to say, the product and the service that I've talked about in the last 20 minutes or so, they come together to and enable us to present this as a platform to our customers with a reduced cost to extend using the open APIs and software engineering, with a reduced cost to launch with our model bank and out-of-the-box features available, with a reduced cost to run the service using cloud-native and cloud-agnostic principles, deployment on Kubernetes orchestrated clusters, and deployed using a zero-trust security-based model. And finally, a reduced cost to ship with CI/CD principles incorporated in the Temenos products, which helps you continuously integrate and continuously deliver any promotions, any enhancements to your product right from development up until production. Finally, I specifically wanted to leave this slide for the last because this kind of is like the icing on the cake. But doing this over the years, learning on the ropes, learning to figure out issues on the fly, we're doing this for the last 8 years. We onboarded our first SaaS customer in 2011 when we ran non-production workloads for a particular customer. As we've come along a far way from that journey, today, as you can see on this slide, we have the likes of ABN AMRO, a behemoth in the banking industry, which has shown its trust in the Temenos SaaS solution. We also have digital challenger banks like the Grasshopper Bank in the US and Varo in the US, who run mobile-only banking. So Varo runs mobile-only banking on Temenos SaaS. Grasshopper Bank is a niche SME challenger bank, similar to some of the banks in Australia, which exclusively lends to for venture financing, venture funding, especially in the Silicon Valley. Similarly, you can see Lunar on the list, which is an FCM on cloud-only solution. So they don't have our core, but they have just opted for the financial crime mitigation solution. And there is EQ Bank right at the bottom, which is a Canadian challenger bank, which went live end-to-end on all Temenos features in 18 months. This is a full-blown implementation, by the way. This has only increased our belief and confidence that we must be doing something right as we have defined our blueprint and are sticking by it to help launch digital challenger banks in 90 days. With that, I come to the end of my session on the Temenos Arsenal and how we have gone about this journey right from scratch to where we have landed. I'm happy to take any questions at the end. I'll be around. For now, I hand the baton back to Kamal. Over to you, Kamal. And thank you for listening patiently.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thanks for that very detailed explanation on the different products and solutions that you provide and the advantages it comes with. Thank you for that. Gentlemen, let's look at what are the next steps in terms of how do we approach this. We looked at what are the different solutions that we have. Now let's look at how do we approach it in terms of actually building it, because at the end of the day, we are targeting to build something or build a neobank in 90 days. So let's start with looking at the implementation principles, the key principles that we should be clear before we actually start. I think let's look at the design principles first. We all talked about the importance of customer experience. We all know how important customer experience is for the users who are actually looking forward to coming to a neobank, or who are not happy with what the customer experience is provided by the traditional bank that they bank with. So it's very important that when we design a neobank, we should keep the customer at the center of it. Most of the traditional banks, they actually put the business as a primary focus, and then they have technology at another level, and then they just go into parallel tracks. But what we want is not that. What we want is the customer to be at the center of it, and all the solutions and services to actually revolve around that customer, and that's the key. And once you do that, and then you provide the best usability to the customer in terms of giving him omni-channel, in terms of giving him seamless transitions, in terms of giving him a quick onboarding solution, and also giving him the best engagement solutions to keep him engaged to the neobank solution that we are providing. I think this is the key. So your design principle should be focused on this. Now, if you turn to the technology side of it, the most important thing is the technology should not stand out as a sore thumb. The technology should be invisible. It should be there to support the design principles that we talk about, because we are focusing on customer experience. We are focused on creating the customer at the center. So it's very, very important that the customer information, the customer data, it cannot be in silos. We are talking about the daily banking transactions. We are talking about ATM transactions. We are talking about the credit card transactions. Whatever it is, it all needs to be together. It needs to be processed. It needs to be analyzed. And that information that we gather from that analytics should be actually used to fuel the different products and services that we offer to the customer. So the technology should aid the customer-centric design approach that we are following. Now, if we come to the implementation aspects of it, right? We know that in this webinar, we are especially talking about how to build the neobank in 90 days, right? So it's very important to have a very clear process in how we achieve this. We cannot look at building, going big bang, coming up with all the different features, all the different functionalities, all the different bells and whistles, put them all together, take several months to analyze the requirements, and then implement it, and then for a long duration, and then come up with a long testing cycle. And by the end of it, when you come out of it, you would not be relevant. The customers, the trends and technology could have changed, and you would no longer be relevant. So what is more important is to have a process which would actually let you do frequent and fast small releases to the market, with which you can start your neobank and then continuously improve upon it. So agile development and continuous integration and continuous deployment is the key. So when you look at implementation, these are the things that should be taken into consideration. And now, when you come to security, neobanks, we are 100% digital. We are exposed to the internet. So it is very important for us to have a multi-layered security, right? So your front-facing mobile apps, or your front-facing web application, your security should start from there. Be it the kind of authentication service that you're using. So you will most likely use tie-up with an authentication provider, and your security should start from there. So what are the different security that you can add from there itself? Is it just about entering a username, password, and letting the user in, or can you bring in more additional behavioral authentication by checking the way the user behaves with the mobile device, and can you capture that and make your system more secure? And then it flows down to all the different layers in the application stack. So we need to make sure that we provide a multi-layer security, and we also need to make sure that we have a security operation center when we actually take our solution to production, where the security operations center should ensure that they should preempt all the security threats. They should ensure that all the security patches are up to date, and the system is safe at all points in time. So these are some of the principles that you need to keep in mind when you go and actually implement the Neobank. Now, let's move to, okay, let's understand, before we even start, before we even write any line of code, before we even come up with the designs, right? What should be clear in our minds? There are three things, right? The first is we need to make our Neobank unique. What is our USP? How are we different from others? We need to have a clear business objective, and this business objective could be anything. And this is basically, your business priority. What is the objective that I'm going to meet? Am I going to give this many loans in this period of time, right? Or am I going to get this much of deposits for this period of time? You need to be clear about that, and then you need to know which is the target customer segment that you're following. I also emphasized this earlier, that you need to have a clear focus. You're not going to go all over. You're going to have a look at a very narrow market, and you're going to go all out for them. It could be a niche SME segment, or it could be a very niche retail segment, looking at very focused age group, very focused working group, whatever it is. You have to have a target segment, and you also need to have a value proposition. What is the value that you're providing? Is it instant loan approval, or are you going to ensure that your customers would have enough instruments to make savings, and they'll be able to have a goal-based saving of this much amount for this much time? You need to provide that value. So it's very important to be unique. It's very important to have a business objective, to identify the target customers, and to know what is the value that we are offering. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot go with a big bang approach. You really need to go with a phased approach. You need to find out what is that you can actually come up with in the first 3 months, the first 90 days. So you can come up with an MVP in the first 90 days. And what is this minimum viable product? It could be the initial set of functionalities, and we can actually look at some of the examples on what kind of functionalities you can come up with in a successive slide. But the point is, you need to identify your priority. You need to define your product backlog, if I may call it, if I may use the agile language. And then you need to come up with the release backlog. So individual releases. So the MVP, what is your backlog? For your release one, what is your backlog? For your CVP, what is your backlog? So define that, and then start converting them into detailed, user stories or business requirements. So if you look at this, it's a cycle. It's an iteration, right? So you first come up with your first set of modules identified, or your first set of release backlogs identified. Then you get into the details of these backlogs. So if you may call them the high-level epics, and then you come up with the detailed user story for each of those epics, and then you put in the right UX design for it. And that's where you complete your design phase, and then you move into implementation, where you bring in your technology team who comes and develops, and then does the testing cycle. It can be if you are using, for example, a sprint-based agile model. Then let's say you have a 2-week sprint where a particular functionality is developed and tested, and 2 weeks there is a release. So every 2 weeks you actually get to see the product. You will be able to give your feedbacks and then continuously improve it, so that in a 3-month period you have a ready product which can be released to the market. And once it is released to the market, you need to make sure that you have a managed services in place who will be managing your infrastructure, and who will also be supporting your applications. So this is the model. So the key takeaway from this, it has to be phase-wise. It has to be small and frequent releases, and it has to be a continuous iteration. We can look at an example of how we should plan it, and this is just indicative, and it completely differs from one customer to another, one Neobank to another. But if you look at one example here, probably we can have some insights into how we can plan it. So if you look at this, I have split them into 3 releases. First is the MVP, and then the release one and the CVP, each with a 90-day period. And then we're looking at all the columns here are the different high-level functionalities that we're looking at. So we're looking at onboarding, and we know that this is very, very, very important because onboarding is how your new customers are going to come into the system, right? As Pradeep said earlier, where are these people coming from? They are coming from another bank. They are coming from your competition. So you need to ensure that you have a very robust marketing mechanism and an onboarding mechanism. So if somebody comes to your mobile app or to your web online application, you need to make sure that you are giving them a very efficient and very efficient onboarding system through which they can actually onboard with very few clicks. It actually matters a lot how many clicks you make to actually onboard, how much of data that you need to type in through your tiny mobile device to actually get onboarded. So you need to have the right optimization at all these different levels to ensure that somebody can be onboarded. So, for example, if you can make use of a identification gateway through which somebody can enter their national ID and then you get them verified, you do an AML check online, you do a credit check online, and if you can, all this can happen in a few seconds, and you can onboard somebody onto the system, then that would be a wonderful, customer experience. So that is the key. So you would principally focus on the onboarding in your MVP because that's the primary idea, to have maximum users come into the system, get onboarded, and you might not be able to, you might not have the luxury to build a lot of functionalities for them in the MVP itself. So you will have some basic savings accounts. You will have a basic a term deposit. So term deposit would be a good idea to have in the beginning because you would want to start, raising money. You would want to start raising deposits so that you can, lend it later. You would have very limited spending mechanism in the first MVP. You would have own account transfer, so that somebody who has a savings account, he receives some fund into the savings account, he can actually move them to a term deposit. And of course, marketing, we spoke about it, because since you need to have onboarding, you need to have an efficient marketing from the beginning itself. Now, if you go to release one, so now you have customers who are coming into the system. They have basic accounts and they also have term deposits. Now you look at the release one. In release one, what you can approach is whatever onboarding mechanism you have already created, you can improve upon it. So you probably have one ID verification channel. You can start more channels like that. You probably had a happy path above, where if something was not met, then you would probably decline. But when it comes to release one, you probably can have more workflows. So if somebody's credit history was not good, you can actually put him into a different bucket and then take it through a manual verification. So all this can actually, all these are improvisation on the existing onboarding solution that you have built. And then you can, this is your time, this 90 days very important for you to actually build additional functionalities for your savings and spending. So if you especially look at the spending column here, this is where now you're bringing in your debit cards, right? You are actually giving him the spend categorization. So what is the idea? So you actually give him a debit card. It could be a virtual debit card, right? A lot of neobanks do that. They give them virtual debit card, so they don't even have to use they don't have to carry a physical card. It's a virtual debit card. They can actually use it for all their online shopping, and they can even add it to their Apple Pay. Apple Pay actually comes later, but you can even add your virtual debit card to Apple Pay and then make payments. So the idea is you have a debit card, you have a mechanism to do shopping, you have a mechanism to actually do your spending, and then provide the spend categorization. So this is the important part. So Pradeep was talking about how do you engage the customer. You need to give them the right tools to actually engage with the system. So you're giving them spend categorization, you're giving them to do budgeting so that they have a plan in place of how to save money, how to optimize their spending, how much do they spend on food, how much do they spend on fuel, how much do they spend on housing. So these are the tools, again, powered by the intelligent analytics system that is sitting on the background. So this is probably where you need to bring in your analytics inside. And then you would have advanced payments and transfers functionalities as well. And then when you come to the CVP, this is where you can probably have a staff assisted onboarding. So again, you're improving upon whatever you built earlier. And then you have, in the spending, you will have start giving out loans. So this is the time by which you are already 6 months into business, you have enough deposits, you can start giving out more and more loans, you can start giving out credit cards, and you can come up with advanced analytics, saving suggestions and things like that. So this is just a very indicative way in how to approach, how to plan your journey in terms of building your neobank with small frequent releases, starting with the MVP, then adding on top of it another release, and then adding the CVP on top of it. Your priorities could be different, your target customers could be different, but based on that, you can come up with a similar plan. So if you look at the MVP, let's look at what are the components that you would need for the MVP in the example I just showed you. So the MVP, you would definitely need to know where you're going to host it, whether it is an on-prem or it's on the cloud. And then you need to ensure that you need to have the core banking system there. You need to have the digital channels there. You also need to have a lot of associated systems like the analytics, like the digital marketing, like the SCM. So if you want to have the spend categorization, for example, you probably need your analytics. You need to onboard customers, you need your SCM. You need to get customers to your onboarding entrance, then you would need digital marketing. Authentication server for customers to actually come in and log into the system. You would need a chatbot to give some kind of support. You would not have live chat with real users, but you probably have a chatbot so that customers can start interacting with the bot. You would need biometrics authentication so that customers can log in. That again adds to the customer experience. Instead of typing in the username password, they can authenticate using their biometrics. This is again about customer experience. So this is some of the things that you would probably want in your MVP in the first 90 days itself. And then when you come to the next release, you would add some functionalities on top of it, right? So you would need your payments now because customers want to make payments. You probably want to have a card, debit cards in place, so you need to have a CMS. You probably need to have PFM, personal finance management, to have more deeper tools for the customers to engage in terms of giving them a goal-based saving, for example. So these are all coming in this phase. And then finally, when it comes to CVP, you would add your next layer, and this is where you have Apple Pay, Google Pay. Apple Pay especially, you cannot. It's very difficult for you to target initially because it takes a little bit of time to develop all the Apple Pay modules in your mobile app. So this is a plan again based on the plan I showed you earlier. These are some of the components that you need to actually bring in to achieve the plan. All right, so let's look at some of the challenges and the solutions. I'm sure that when you go down this journey, you will face different challenges. I'll go through a few of them. Customer retention. This is going to be a principal challenge. You are going to be focused on customer onboarding. You would try to get as much as customers onto your system, but how do you retain them? That's the key question, right? So you need to provide the best customer experience, the best customer engagement. And we saw a lot of options for this, right? So we need to have a robust analytic systems in place, and we need to have different tools for the customers to engage, whether it could be for saving, whether it could be to understand the spend categorization, to do budgeting, to do planning, whatever it could be. You need to provide them the right customer experience and the engagement. You need to make sure that your customer is at your center, and that's what every product and service revolves around. And then your analytics should be able to predict what the customer wants and offer that product or service that the customer wants. And that's the critical piece of it. If you look at the cost, you obviously need to control your cost, and that could be a challenge for you. And again, as we mentioned, you need to first of all choose the right products and services. You need to make sure that you have optimal spending on your infrastructure. So if you have a cloud infrastructure, then that can help you in a big way, so that you would be able to optimize the right scale. You don't have to really scale up your whole system. You can scale up module by module if you probably use a core banking which has which come with microservices. So these are some of the things that you need to look at to actually optimize your costs. Narrow product offering, yes, you might have a narrow product offering, but then you're focusing on a very, very niche segment. So that should be fine. But the point is you need to go all out for that segment. You need to provide all the different products and services that is needed for that segment. And of course, when it comes to operations and compliance, you need to partner with the right systems integrator, right products who can help you with all the different challenges that you would come up with. And also when it comes to compliance, you need to again have the right products in place, right hosting partners, right systems integrator to do your managed services. So these are some of the challenges and some of the solutions how we can address them. So now let's look at a case study, and this is where a proven test case, a proven example where Temenos and Aspire Systems together have helped a customer in Australia to come up with a neobank. So what was the vision? The vision, they had a vision, and the vision was to become a unicorn challenger bank, right? And they were focusing on lending $1 billion, and that was, they were clear that that's what they wanted to do because they believed there is a huge vacuum and there are a lot of SMEs who are not getting enough loans. And they had lots of challenges in terms of onboarding, in terms of customer retention. So we actually provide them with the right products and services to actually overcome these challenges. So let's look at some of the attributes of this. Now, how did we do this? What was the journey like? So we did this in 2 releases. So we had an MVP first, a 3-month MVP. In 90 days, we had the MVP released, and then we had the CVP. So we had the T24, the Temenos Transact was used as the core banking, and this was again, as Pradeep was saying, the Transact on the cloud. We provided this as a service, a banking as a service. So they don't really have to build everything from scratch. It was already built. It had just to be configured and provided as a service. And for document validation, we use Equifax. For anti-money laundering, we use the Temenos FCM solution. For the analytics, we use the Temenos Insights. Unify was used for the document management. InView was used for payments, and Azure AD for authentication. So this was the release 1, and the release 2, that's when we actually brought in the digital channels. In the digital channels, it was the retail digital channel, the SME-focused digital channel, and the onboarding and origination solution, along with the authentication using Azure AD. So this was in 2 phases, and this is how we actually took that journey. Now, so if you look at what are the different activities that were performed, so as I explained earlier, Temenos did provide the core products and solutions for this, Transact, Infinity, FCM, and Insights. And Aspire actually worked on top of these solutions in terms of implementing them, customizing them, conducting trainings for the bank. We implemented the web and the mobile channels for them, both for SME and the retail. We implemented the onboarding and origination. We did the UX engineering for this. We did the client's branding, and we performed the UX engineering. We implemented FCM and FCM along with Temenos. We also implemented the Insights, and we also provided the post-go-live support. And for all the different integrations, was it Equifax, InView, all the different integrations was also performed by Aspire Systems. Right. So, what was the value that we provided together? Aspire and Temenos. Temenos provide all the core systems that the bank needed, and this right systems helped them to actually go fast to market because it was already built. They didn't have to build it from scratch. It was there on the cloud. So they were able to scale it quickly, and all the right tools in place. Whether it is FCM. So the bank wanted to actually hand out loans to people who were unbanked or who were not getting the right service from the bank, the right loans from the bank. Using this FCM service, using the right integrations, we were actually able to provide that. And what was Aspire's contribution? Aspire's contribution was they were able to quickly develop the deposit products, and this was critical for the bank to come up with first a set of deposit products so that people can actually get onboarded and start depositing the money. And once that was done, they were able to easily lend using the robust FCM that Temenos provided, and the Equifax credit checks integration that we have done. The easy lending was possible. So one side you were able to take deposits, the other side you were able to make sure that lending could be done easily, with limited manual intervention. Sorry. So the key focus of the bank was to lend out $1 billion in loans, and both these steps ensured that it was possible. And we also, our operational process in terms of the project management process that we followed, the agile project process we followed, and also the continuous integration and continuous deployment we followed, they were able to go faster. The go-to-market was very, very fast. We also ensured that we brought in the right customer experience, the right user experience for the customers, and they had a system which was omni-channel, and they had a system where customers could onboard quickly into the system. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. Very, very thankful for all of you for your patient listening. Now, I think we have some time remaining to take a few questions. I think there are some questions that are coming in the chat window. If you have more questions, you can actually add to the questions window.
Right. Kamal, I see a question here that I think I can take from a Temenos standpoint, if it's all right with you. What and how is the engagement model of Temenos? Will it be a one-stop engagement considering Microsoft Azure providing public cloud? What will be the RACI between three entities, bank, Temenos, and Microsoft? That's a good question, actually. So it's pretty straightforward and clear the way we have kind of put the partnership together, and allow me to elaborate. So Temenos, like I said, is built on the Microsoft Azure platform. The engagement model is your single touch point or single throat to choke, like we say in the IT parlance, is Temenos. You only speak with Temenos. Temenos manages the relationship between its own products and the platform, which is Microsoft itself. It makes sure all the patching, all the activities happen. Whatever communication needs to come, that's your endpoint, and you don't need to look beyond them. You will never hear a response from Temenos saying, "Oh, that's Microsoft's problem, talk to them." Everything squarely and surely will rest with the Temenos customer success point for you as a customer to work with. I hope that's clear from a RACI perspective. Obviously, RACI is much more elaborate and complicated, and we can always, as we go down an engagement path, we can start talking what documentation exists around it. But this is the rule of thumb that we follow for all of our SaaS engagements. For all our customers, Temenos is the point of contact. Anything that is to do with whether technology, whether platform, whether the data layer, it's all taken care of by Temenos. At the back end, whether it is a problem with Temenos, whether it's an incident that needs to be resolved with Microsoft's involvement, all of that is our baby. We take care of it. We just get the package service out of the box. Thanks. I hope I've answered that question. I see someone's asking for a copy of the slide presentation. I assume that should be all right, but I will let Kamal answer that.
Yeah, I think the team will get back to you with the copy of the slides. I don't think that should be a problem. Okay, so there is another question on the presence of Temenos and Aspire in Kuala Lumpur or Phnom Penh. So we have Aspire Systems have an office in Singapore. We also have offices in other parts of the world, but our primary delivery center from the APAC region is from Singapore. But we have resources who would travel to different parts of the region, and we have projects across different countries in the APAC region. And Pradip, you want to answer?
Yes. So Temenos has an office in Kuala Lumpur as well. It's a satellite office. We also have live customers in Malaysia. They are not Temenos SaaS customers yet, but we have Temenos on-premise traditional customers already there. In fact, right before the COVID-19 situation hit us, I was scheduled to spend about 2 weeks in Kuala Lumpur talking to Bank Negara and some of the other prospects of our Temenos SaaS offering just when all of this moved online and I had to do all of that virtually. So yes, but yes, we do have a presence there. Yes, you're right.
Okay.
Back to you, Kamal.
Yeah, thanks, Pradip. So there's another question on can we really ready this in 90 days? So I think the answer for that is we really need to focus and we really need to prioritize, right? We as I said earlier, we cannot go with the big bang. We cannot build everything in 90 days. That's going to be impossible. But you really need to prioritize. You really need to phase it out, and you really need to know what is the most important functionalities that you need to take it out. And once you do that, you will definitely be able to do it with the right products and services that Temenos and Aspire offer. So Temenos, as I said, they give you with the right solution, so you don't really have to build it from the scratch. So the solution is already there, and it's available as a service. You really don't even have to deploy it. So with that, and then with the right plan in place, you will be able to achieve this in 90 days itself. But then another caveat, you would need to have multiple integrations. You would also need to have third-party vendors who would coming in. It could be for PSM solutions. It could be for authentication. Now, it is very important to do this coordination among all these different vendors. And this is where the right systems integrator who have experience doing that is important for you. Otherwise, I've been through this. I know the challenge associated with coordinating multiple vendors and coming out with a solution which is all integrated among these vendors in 90 days. We have done it. We have experienced it, but you need to have the right plan in place. All right. So I think
well put, Pawan. Kamal, I don't have anything to add on that.
Okay. So I think we have a few more questions, but then I think we are running out of time. So any more questions, please reach out to us, and we will make sure that we will address it for you. Thank you all for patiently listening to this webinar. Thanks for your participation. Thanks to you from both Aspire Systems and Temenos.
Thank you, everybody. Take care and stay safe. Bye.
Stay safe. Bye.